Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's SCORE Fairfield County live webinar on 5 Keys to Successful Fundraising. I'm Alan Rosenberg, the webinar coordinator and a business mentor here at SCORE Fairfield County. I'll be your host. Our presenter today is Raquel Virgo. More on Raquel in a minute. First, some brief information on SCORE. With 310 offices and over 10,000 volunteers nationally, SCORE was started in the mid-60s as part of the SBA. At SCORE Fairfield County, we have 130 volunteers with a wide range of industry, process, and subject matter expertise. We offer 3 primary valued-added services to small business owners. One-on-one counseling, that's face-to-face, telephone, email, or Skype. Educational workshops and webinars, as we're doing today, and extensive resources on our website, including a network of subject matter experts at your disposal. Our next webinar is 12 noon on Tuesday, May 7th, when Joy Schroeder will present Growing a Small Business. Look for the specifics on our fairfieldcounty.score.org website. And for free individual counseling, go to the SCORE website and click on Request a Mentor. Now for some information on today's event. We've set aside time for questions and answers at the end of the presentation. If you have a question, please use the chat window at any time during the presentation. It's located in the lower left part of your screen. Our webinar will end sharply at 1 p.m. to respect your time. The session is being recorded, and a link to the recording will be available at fairfieldcounty.score.org within a couple of days. And now for our speaker. Raquel has over a decade of experience in fundraising for nonprofits in New York City, Connecticut, South Carolina, and California. Raquel has raised more than $20 million for causes related to youth education, workforce development, homelessness, criminal justice reform, and environmental education. Raquel currently serves as the founder and managing consultant of a fundraising consulting firm, Women of Change, in which she works with several nonprofits in Connecticut, New York, and California. And now I'll turn it over to Raquel.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's SCORE webinar, 5 Keys to Successful Nonprofit Fundraising. I am your presenter today, Raquel Virgo. And to get started, I would like to go into just talking more about the relationship aspect of fundraising and managing those relationships, as well as all of the things that you can do to build up your network of donors. So within this presentation, the 5 keys that, again, that we'd like to focus on today are related to relationship management and donor acquisition within nonprofit fundraising. We will touch upon goal setting. How do you define what your goals are for fundraising based on your needs and your wants? Donor identification and qualification. How to learn and understand your audience. Making personal contact with existing and potential donors, and tracking your contacts and connections with your donors and others who you wish to be donors. First and foremost, I'd like to touch upon goal setting. This is with respect to how do you set your goals within your fundraising department and for your organization based on your needs and things that you would like for your organization to do. So with respect to setting your goal, you are expected to set a goal for your organization and to continue to raise it. So as with continuing to raise it, that means that once you set that first goal, your milestone, obviously you will make progress to that. So that goal should essentially increase over time. The first thing that you should ask yourself in fundraising for your organization is, how does your goal relate to your organization's mission, right? Is it mission aligned? This means that whatever you're looking to do within your organization, whether that's add a new program, add a new service, start a new initiative, add new staff, anything related to your programs, services, infrastructure, you are setting goals based on those needs or those wants. And those goals must be related back to your organization's mission. Remembering what your inspiration is. So I apologize, I'm going to be skipping around here a little bit. Remembering your inspiration. What are you raising money for, right? You cannot set a goal if you don't know what you're raising money for. As an example, take an organization that may not have the staffing infrastructure to support their administration or their various programs and services. So that means that you need to fundraise for that specific need. So your fundraising could be structured as you need more general operating support, or you need more capacity building support in order to make sure that you're meeting your goals, you're meeting your mission, and your donors are aligned with that as well. Putting a price tag on fundraising. So once you've identified your organization's goal, right, whether that means you want to expand, you want to open a new site, location, you want to add new staffing, you must know how much that's going to cost you, right? So within your organization, you always create budgets, but you should create a budget for your goal as well. And be realistic about it, but you should also be ambitious, right? Don't shortcut yourself. So in fundraising, the goal is ask for more. In a lot of cases, you do not get what you ask for. If you ask for that big dollar figure, you might get close to it, but ask for more. Be ambitious in what you're asking for. Don't undercut yourself. And then obviously, once you've put a price tag and you've figured out what your goal is, you develop a plan to reach that goal. How will you raise your money? And in developing that plan, how can you make sure that in your fundraising, that funding is diverse, right? So there are various ways to raise funds for nonprofit organizations. As many of you know, there may be grants, individual giving, memberships if you are a membership organization. There may be special events, or even appeals and mailings may help you to raise money. But you must set a goal. You must figure out what your plan is in order to reach that goal. After you've determined your goal and what you want to raise money for, how much you want to raise, who do you need to reach out to, and how you're going to do that, now you need to figure out, like, how do you put this plan in action, especially with respect to gaining new donors, right? Oftentimes we think of donors as only some wealthy folks that are unicorns who are going to give to your organization, as opposed to folks that you may know in your everyday life. A donor can be anyone. It can literally be your friends, your family members, volunteers to your organization, other people such as residents of your community, beneficiaries of services. But you should always think creatively when you are trying to figure out where you should get your money from. Who should those donors be, right? Oftentimes folks are going to the very same people who are benefiting from the services. As an example, in the past I've worked for an organization that supported people who fell into homelessness. Many of those people, this organization had a really great success rate in housing people and keeping them housed in permanent housing. Oftentimes, those folks who have previously been homeless have gone on to secure jobs and financial security, that they're able to go and give back to those same organizations that have supported them. So think of even those folks who are benefiting from your service as potential donors. Think of your volunteers as potential donors. Think of your family and friends as potential donors, or if you have any relationships outside of that, any affiliations with clubs or associations, all of those are potential for you to secure donors. Once you've figured out how and where you could potentially tap into a donor base, you must know the audience that you are attempting to approach for donations. So I always encourage, prior to reaching out to asking anyone for funding, whether that's an individual or a foundation or a corporation even, make sure that you know your audience. Make sure that you do your research on them, and you are able to answer the questions for yourself of why are you reaching out to them, right? So as an example, a volunteer. You're reaching out to that volunteer because they've shown a track record of commitment to your organization, supporting by giving in-kind support as a volunteer. So that's one reason that you would reach out to them. Do they share the same interests? Obviously, that same volunteer does have an interest in your organization or the field that you're working within. Or maybe this corporation that's in your local city does give back to the community to a specific cause. Let's say you are a homeless organization, and you found out that this big bank in your area gives to housing programs. That could be a substantial reason as to why you are reaching out to them. Are you aware of the person or an organization's giving or volunteer work elsewhere? So this applies especially to individuals that you're looking to acquire as donors. In this case, you may find out that a volunteer is supporting another organization, right, by giving them donations and or serving as a volunteer in their programs or services. And that organization has many similarities to yours. So, and you have some sort of relationship with them. So this is a likely prospect for you that you should be reaching out to. How does your work affect this person? So someone, again, that same volunteer, may be affected by your programs or services because they knew somebody who was affected by the very same issue that your organization is working within. So as an example, if you are working, if you have an organization that serves special needs children, perhaps this person has a special needs child, or someone in their family had a special needs child, and that's the reason why and how they have come to your organization or to a similar organization, because the work affects them in some way. What is their giving capacity? This is often a very difficult question to answer because that information, especially about individuals, is not always readily available. And in this case, again, you may be able to find out where this person has given before. You may be able to find out through that organization's annual reporting that this person has given a substantial gift to that organization. And that's how you can quantify what their giving capacity is. For corporations or for private foundations, finding their giving capacity is a little bit easier than finding an individual's giving capacity because with respect to foundations, all of their financial information is public knowledge. So you would find out what their giving capacity, how much they're giving away in grants to other organizations by simply looking at their financials online, like their Form 990s, which is something they have to file every single year, and it lists out how much they've given and to whom. Once you've answered all of these very important questions about the potential donors, whether that's an individual, foundation, or corporation, you should move to develop a profile on that person or entity you're seeking support from. This profile would include very critical, important information about that answers all of these questions and documents it so that if in the case that somebody else is taking over fundraising within your organization, or you have a consultant that's helping you with fundraising, they're able to have access to the same information that you have about that person or organization that you're seeking funding from. Once you have gathered all of this information and developed this profile on each and every single donor that you're wishing to acquire, you should also be prepared in reaching out to folks to explain the benefits of a relationship with your organization. The benefit should not just be the benefit to you and your organization, but it should also include the benefits of their support to them. This means for corporations that support nonprofit organizations, a lot of times they want to know, well, what are we going to receive in exchange for supporting you? And oftentimes, for corporations in particular, or even for some foundations, that means they want you maybe to put out a press release to let folks know that they're supporting you. They may want you to put out a blast on your website, keeping their logos there to promote your relationship. So there's various ways that you can. This is something that you develop, what that benefit looks like, but you should always be prepared to talk about how that person or that entity support would also benefit them in addition to you and your organization. Once you have defined who your audience is and you've figured out what they're interested in, where they've given before, where they've volunteered before, you've come up with those benefits, and now you want to reach out to them and make a phone call or have an in-person visit. Again, you should, before doing that, you need to determine a clear reason to visit or for the call. In this way, you want to communicate very clearly to them what is the reason that you want to get together, right? So, as an examples for reasons to visit or call, one is, simply you want to get to know that person or that organization, right? And it's not just for you to become familiar with them, but it's also for them to get to know you. Another good reason for a call or a visit, again, back to that same volunteer, to thank a volunteer who you're hoping to convert into a donor about the impact that their volunteer work has had on the organization. And another reason is to just share information or updates about your organization's work and plans for the future. Right? Folks always love being privy to what your organization's doing now and what your plans are for the future. And some people get very excited about knowing that they can play a part in that. So make sure that you're extremely clear, and if you have an opportunity to plug in anyone, whether that's an individual or a foundation or a corporation into your work and your plans for the future, make sure that you let them know that. So that's something that you can also talk about in a phone call, or an in-person visit, which is preferable in this case. Once you're able to connect with that individual or organization, you always want to make your contact personal. You never want to make a potential donor or even an existing donor feel as if you're giving them a cookie-cutter response and some generic response or some generic description that you pass on to everyone else. Obviously, in some cases, that is fine, but your contact should always be personal. And back again, being transparent about your purpose for contact, right? Always tell them, right? If your plan is to meet up with a wealthy individual that you plan to eventually ask for a donation to your organization, be upfront about what that visit is for. Be upfront about that conversation, right? Nobody likes those surprises. Be responsive. Whenever you are connecting with someone who could potentially be a donor, even if it is a volunteer, even if it is one of the beneficiaries of your programs or services, a community member, be so responsive that you're getting back to folks within 24 to 48 hours, right? This is because you always assume that the person that you're corresponding with is busy, that they have 20,000 other emails that they need to respond to. And so that they can forget about you very quickly. So if you had a phone conversation, if you had coffee with a potential donor, make sure to follow up with them right after. If they've sent you an email, make sure to follow up with them right after. And always make sure that that contact is succinct and to the point, because busy people, I'm sure many of you also, busy people don't have time to read very long emails. And just one other note on making contact personal. Always communicate with individuals the way that they ask to be communicated with. So if someone says, email me, do that. Do not call them. If they say, call me, do that. Do not email. If a person from a foundation asks to be referred to by their first name, do that, right? So that's all of part of making contact personal with existing or potential donors. A few more tips on contact with existing or potential donors. Always have relevant information or documents on hand, right? So that means having that script that profile that you developed on that individual or that organization, have that on hand with all of the information that you've documented about them, right? Prepare a script to guide your conversation if you need to, but always have that information that you need available and on hand so that you can refer to that throughout. Obviously, always be polite. Be prepared to listen and make sure that you've heard the person that you're speaking to. A lot of times in fundraising, and it depends on many different places where you are. In Connecticut, for example, there happen to be a lot of very small family-run foundations, and many of those families have very maybe elderly people who are handling the funding, right? So you want to make sure that you're communicating with them in the way that you need to and that they would like, and making sure that you understand them and they understand you, and being succinct and to the point and be consistent in your messaging. And once again, communicate with folks in using their preferred method of contact. The hardest part, cultivating new potential donors. So cultivating donors is a lengthy process. Cultivation is that process through which that you convert a person who's not currently giving to your organization to getting them to become a donor to your organization. And again, this is not applied just to individuals. This is also applicable to acquiring donors from donations from big foundations and corporations, right? And that whole process can take a lot of time, right? But don't ever be discouraged by that. But here are some ways that you can keep that process moving. again, you've already developed your fundraising strategy, right? And that strategy, your individual or your foundation, donor cultivation, all of that is included in this strategy. This will be your guide throughout the whole entire process that you're talking to this person or this organization. And obviously, this can change throughout that process. And it can be customized depending on that particular person or entity. Come up with a list of meaningful opportunities for engagement, right? Individuals and organizations love to be involved. They love to be able to see firsthand the work that you're doing. Invite them for a site visit to see your programs or your services in action if that's possible. Invite those individuals to an upcoming event. It does not necessarily have to be a fundraising event, but invite them out to come to a special event that you have and include during that time some personal interaction. Also, you can invite them to volunteer. If you're having an event and you need some additional support, you can put it out there that you're looking for help through that event or in your programs or services. More times than not, people are more than willing to help, especially with corporations. Corporations often that is part of their social responsibility strategy. So they're not just giving donations and grants to different organizations. They also want to be involved as volunteers as well. And then focus on finding common ground in those connections and in your cultivation process. In talking to folks, you may have limited information available in that profile that you developed, but this is the time, the cultivation process is the time to find out more information about that person or that organization. So this is your opportunity to find out what motivates them to give or to volunteer, and what and how they can support you. And also don't be shy about sharing the reasons why you're passionate about the work of your organization and your mission. Whenever you're connecting with an individual or an organization to support your organization, you always want to document your contact, your relationship, all of those profile facts, because that is going to be essential to any follow-up activity, not just for that immediate follow-up for that gift that you're trying to secure right now, but for the future as well. So if the proverbial bus came along and hit you or your development person, somebody else later would know what to do, what are the next steps, where the last person left off. So that information that you plug in and save in your records is extremely important for moving that relationship on and keeping that relationship going. So whether you have a fundraising database like Salesforce, Donor Perfect, Razor's Edge, or any others, or you just use Google Drive to document your activity, always document and track your contacts with every single individual or entity that you connect with. Whenever you have secured that meeting or that phone call, or you've secured that volunteer that you're hoping to have as a donor to your organization, always thank them. The power of thanking somebody is extremely underrated, but thanking folks gets you a very long way. There have been times that I've sent out a thank you note to somebody for, even talking me through any other resources that the organization may be able to tap into. So they didn't give a gift, but thanking them for helping with advisement or as a volunteer went a long way, and they ended up turning around and giving to the organization. So those thank you notes mean a whole lot to many people. Again, going back to the time frame for cultivation, don't ever be discouraged by a slow response or a lack of response. Keep at it. This is to say that in the past I've worked with several different foundations. Many of them are not always very responsive, and I just continue to, like, every so often send over an email or try to make some sort of contact with them to remind them, hey, I'm still here. Keep following up. Keep at it, because they may ultimately turn around and direct their attention at you and may entertain that call or may entertain that in-person meeting, which can ultimately lead to funding. Lastly, when you're connecting with folks, don't just reach out when you're looking for money, right? In between, so let's say you've been cultivating this individual for 6 months, and now nine months late after that, they're giving you a gift, right? So now every time that it comes time, every year you want to renew that gift from that individual, that's when you're reaching out. But in between, they don't hear from you at all. That is the absolute wrong thing to do. Make sure that you're connecting with that person or that entity in between. Even sending them updates about, okay, your gift supported us to do this, or here is an update on progress within the organization. You always want to have make an opportunity to reach out to that individual or that organization in between their giving period, because why? They're always they like to know that you're thinking of them, and two, they feel that relationship is much more authentic if you're reaching out in between informally and not asking for money. So make sure that you're reaching out in between those times as well. And now with that, I'd like to move into questions. I already have seen that some of you have your hands raised, and I'd like to go over a few questions with you.
Thanks, Raquel. And just to remind everyone, you can do questions and answers by going to the chat feature in the lower left portion of the screen. Here's a question. What is one of the more unusual donor requests you've gotten?
I don't think that I've ever gotten a donor request that was too extraordinary, but I think one instance that I can think of, and this relates back to making sure that you know your audience, is finding out that there is a thing when if you ask an individual for a donation and you ask for too little, some folks actually get insulted by that. And that was something that I found out very early on in my career, is that you have to make sure that you are very aware of that person or that organization's giving capacity. So if you found out that this individual gives $20,000 gifts to every organization that they've volunteered for, that they've donated to, right, you don't want to go and ask them for just $500, right? So you want to set that ask to the level that's appropriate for that person or that entity. So I think that was probably the most unusual situation, but not really an unusual request from a donor.
Okay. Here's another one. What kind of time frame do you recommend to follow up? A week, a month?
Sure. So if you've had a conversation, let's say that you had a meeting with a foundation today, and you sent the follow-up note to thank them for that meeting tomorrow, and next week now, there was no response at all, right? But there is some follow-up action that needs to happen as a result of your meeting, but this person has not responded. So in the following week, you'd want to, send them a quick note just to follow up. And I think after that, if you still haven't heard from them, every few days or every week, I think is fair. at the very least every week is a fair time frame. But every month, unless that organization or that individual says, I have this going on and I won't be as responsive, then that's usually when you wait as long as a month to follow up. But typically, you want to do that in a shorter time frame.
Okay. There's another question. How do you measure what's too much or not enough of a donation request?
Wow. That's, again, based on the giving capacity that you've quantified when you are qualifying your donors, right? So for individuals, there are actually various tools, cloud-based tools that you can use that can help you find out what someone's potential wealth level is. And you can also, in some of these cloud-based softwares, you can also see where and to whom they've given before, like even their political giving, right? So that is one way. This particular software I'm thinking of is the cloud-based called Relationship Science, or REL-Sci, where you're able to see their giving capacity, and you're able to make that determination based on that. And again, for foundations, you can measure up what's too much or not enough of a donation request based on what you found in their Form 990, where they've published what they've given to different nonprofit organizations and how much.
What is the real psych URL?
I am happy to send the REL-Sci URL after this. I don't have that with me currently.
Okay.
So with REL-Sci or Relationship Science, you can Google Relationship Science or REL-Sci, RELSCI, in order to find out whether or not it is a useful tool for you and your organization. So that is one way that you can determine wealth for individuals.
Okay, so that's all the questions we have today, and I just wanted to, as a reminder, that this webinar and all the materials are available within a couple of days on the fairfieldcounty.score.org website. And our next webinar will be at 12 noon, Tuesday, May 7th. The topic is Growing a Small Business with Joyce Schroeder as the presenter. On behalf of SCORE, I'd like to thank you all for attending today's live webinar, and please fill out your evaluations, which are going to be sent to you via email. In closing, thank you, Raquel, for presenting today, and remember, for free individual counseling, go to the SCORE website and click on Request a Mentor. Thank you, and everyone have a great day.